Hey, everybody, it's me, Tuniscia O, and welcome to Tea with Tuniscia O. Today's going to be really fun because we are going to talk about a topic that is really super sensitive, but it helped me with becoming a better person, becoming a better mother, and just supporting my children. So today's topic is forgiving yourself for your perceived failures as a mother. Let's face it. The reality is being a mother is one of the most judged jobs that we could ever have. People judge us constantly on how well we're doing. They say speak up if you need help. But then when we speak up because we need help, a lot of times you're judged. Why can't you do it? If you did something differently, maybe it would be different. If you didn't have the kids, when we told you wouldn't be able to do it. You know, all of those things happen. And so a lot of times we suffer in silence as mothers and we just struggle on our own. And so what happens is these stories keep playing in our minds and we have these perceived failures. We have these perceived ideas of who we are, who we could be, who we should be. We're not patient enough. We failed. We yelled at the kids. We didn't do it right. We just have all these stories that we tell ourselves. And the reality is parenthood is really how it was presented to you as a child, right? A lot of times we say, I will never do that, whatever that is. But unless you have worked diligently to work through whatever that is, you are going to be that exact same person. Maybe a little different, but it's going to show up one way or another. So let's talk through it. And I'll share my own journey because Lord knows I'm working through it. I have two adult children, one who is 24-year-old daughter, 23-year-old son, and a 12-year-old son. And so I've had my fair share. And one of the sons that I have, my youngest son, I don't use the word step, but I didn't give birth to him. He's a beautiful gift that I came with my husband in our marriage, and he's just a phenomenal kid. So on top of that, with the perceived failures, throw in there being a stepmother and a teenage mother, and you have a recipe for a whole lot of negative self-talk. So let's get right into it. The first point, and please, you guys, put any comments in there, any questions that I can ask, anything I can answer, let me know. Hey, Tramika, let me know. So the first thing is our failures don't define us. So here's the deal. A lot of times we think that whatever our past pain is, whatever our past hurt is, it is going to 100% impact who we are as parents. But you know what? What I found is a lot of times we try to keep things secret. We just want to brush it under the rug. We don't want to say too much to the kids because if we say it, then they're going to know about it. But sometimes we just need to be honest. We can find ways to talk about it, even if it's too adult, you use your discretion. But we need to just be clear on where we messed up, where we made mistakes. What does that look like? My younger son, when he was a few years back, when he was in elementary school, I noticed that we kept receiving reports from the teacher saying, he's not getting along well with people. He's argumentative. He's kind of confrontational, things of that nature. And I had to have a sit down talk with him. First, I had him go through to the website go online and figure out what he could do to be a better teammate. How could he work out conflict resolution and things of that nature? Secondly, I had to go to him to say, you know what? Daddy and I may have taught you some of these habits because so often we want to blame the kids, but we got to be honest with ourselves. So I had to say, Daddy and I may have taught you some of these habits. And this is how. We're very competitive people in our house. The older kids played sports in college. They've all played sports, right? And so we're just super competitive and we love to debate or have our conversations. It's not even so much that we argue all the time or any of that because my husband and I really don't argue like that, but we're very speak up for yourself, you know, and sometimes that aggression can confuse a child and they don't really know where the balance comes in. Like, where do I turn it up and where do I turn it down? As adults, we realize that, but for him, he didn't know. And it was showing up in the class. And so I had to say, you know what? Mommy taught you that. I taught you that. Meanwhile, remember, this is not even a child that I birthed. So as a stepmother, I could have said, that's between you, your daddy, and your mama. I ain't got nothing to do with that. But the reality is that baby boy lives with me, and I am just as responsible as a parent in the home as anyone else. So I took responsibility to work with him through that. So it wasn't just his problem, but it also was a mirror to me to say, T, you got to step up the way you're showing up for these kids, right? And so I could have taken that as just, I'm this horrible person, but I used it as a teachable moment for myself as well as to share with my baby boy, which is something that we can totally do. So Another thing is when we have these areas we refuse to forgive within. Yes. So there are areas within ourselves, let's just be honest, that we refuse to forgive ourselves in. And if there are any areas within yourself that you refuse to acknowledge, guess what's going to happen? You are going to take that out on your child. What does that look like? Let's say that you've been overweight most of your life, right? And your child has also picked that up. Why? Because you're feeding them the same stuff that you eat that led you to that. There are no boundaries with food, whatever has led to it. I have no idea. I know for me, I like snacks. I'm just going to tell you, if the package crackles, more than likely, I'm like, bring it on. And that's my problem. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. But those are part of the habits. But let's say your child is overweight and you've struggled with this. And so they come home because they've been bullied by kids calling them fat or overweight or whatever these random jokes are that are not funny that kids may say. And so instead of you being in the moment to say, oh, baby, I'm really sorry you're going through that. I know how that feels because I was treated that way. And these were some of the things that I did to get through, or how can we together work through this? Instead of you doing that, if it's not something that you have worked through yourself, because although social media is like, yes, curves and all that stuff, it doesn't mean that deep down within, we don't still feel pain when people judge us, because the reality is we feel that when people judge us. And so if you haven't worked through that, now the child is coming to you vulnerable, like, dang, mom, can you help me? And you're like, I told you, if you didn't eat those Twinkies all the time, you wouldn't have this problem. I told you, if you didn't do this or that. There's no empathy. There's no compassion. There's no love. And we miss that moment to really connect with our baby. And afterwards, you may think, dang it, I made them feel worse. But the reality is, they may not in that moment have been talking to the adult mother that they thought they were speaking to. They may have been talking to that 10-year-old wounded child who was the same child who was battered and abused and maybe beat up or whatever happened on the playground. Because that's something that you haven't gone through to work through. And that's just our reality. And that's why it's important for us to really look in the mirror to see what is happening, because our perceived failures just come down to whatever our mind is saying, whatever our thoughts are saying, whatever we're meditating the most on. And in order to shift that, we get to shift. We get to change. And sometimes that journey happens with our children. I've taken some really beautiful journeys with my adult children on me healing me in order to support them as well. Some areas that I didn't even know was a problem, but I was like, clearly it's a problem. So I'm going to say this. If any of you are parents who have adult children, you already know when they become adults, they show you exactly what you taught them through their childhood. If you're still with smaller children and you're thinking, I'm keeping it away from them, they don't know, don't fool yourself. I'm telling you the truth. Those kids see everything, and don't you worry about a thing. They're going to come back and show you exactly what you taught them as an adult. So start working through those things right now. The second point is our consistent habits and patterns shape our children. Our consistent habits and patterns shape our children. Not like the one-offs where you just randomly made one mistake. That's not what I'm talking about. You know, what are consistent habits? Maybe you clean the house every Saturday, making the bed daily, cussing people out in public. Let's just be real. They see what you're doing and you are showing them how to do it. For me, I'm going to tell you, one of my most painful realizations as a mother was, as my children became adults, I was like, why are these kids getting so feisty? You know, I had a little spark in me, but what's going on with these kids? The reality is, I wasn't so nice to my mother. And this is not one of my proudest moments, but it's the truth and it's my truth. And I wasn't so nice to her because she had been dishonest with me about who my father was my entire life. And although the word says forgive and the church says forgive, and I said, I forgive, I really didn't know how to forgive her. You know, therapy and counseling wasn't something that is as popular as it is now. And I didn't know, but I thought that I had forgave her because I still went for Christmas. I still was around her, but I was real nasty with the way I spoke to her. I wasn't respectful or loving or kind. And I felt like she needed to feel the same pain that I felt. She needed to feel whatever I felt. But what I didn't realize is how closely my children were watching. And what I didn't realize, because they were about 6 or 7, was that in that moment and in all those years, I was literally teaching them and giving them the playbook on how to love me as a mother. But in my mind, I was like, I didn't treat them the way I didn't do what she did to me to them. But that didn't matter. It was my energy, that toxic energy that I was putting out. It had to come back to me. And so it was during my time when God was like, look at how you treated your mother. You're wondering why these kids are misbehaving and doing whatever they're doing. Now, sidebar, I have beautiful, amazing children. Beautiful, amazing children. Baby girl has her master's degree. She studied abroad in France. She pledged. She did all that stuff. My middle baby boy, he's the one who really showed me. You ever had that one kid who I feel like if there was one child who could pick up every bad habit that you ever demonstrated in life and just throw it at you, that was him. He's a beautiful gift. Well, that baby boy, he dropped out of college for like a year and a half. He has since gone back. He graduates in a couple months. But the point is, it was during my time like, God, can you help me? Because so many of us go to God and we're like, these kids are this and these kids are that. But how many of us are really being accountable that some of that stuff is ours? While we're praying for God to fix somebody else, we really need to be coming to him like, show me my heart. Show me me. Because I know I had to, and some of that stuff, I was like, good golly, I done really messed up. And I had to go to those kids and tell my babies, I didn't get this right. But unless we shift this right now, and unless you shift your behavior right now, you are going to pass this on to your children. And this toxic behavior is just not good. Let's grow together, which is what we've done. How did I decide to shift my perceived failures? I faced them. Today's message is not a feel-good thing. It's really for us to jolt into reality of how we can shift our reality. We get to control the narrative of our lives, and it is going to require some very uncomfortable situations. Very uncomfortable situations. Some of us are wondering why our businesses aren't thriving. It's because we need to go back to the drawing board and look at our behavior and look at ourselves to see where we're stuck so that we can thrive and grow through that thing and move forward. Third point. Our convictions can produce change to improve, which is exactly what I was just talking about a moment ago, right? So what is one area of your life that you feel you want to improve in? One, because I'm going to tell you, I might be the only person, but I am so guilty of like, okay, I'm going to do everything different. And then I trick myself to say I'm going to do everything different all in the same day. I'm going to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to run 25 miles today. I'm going to write a brand new book, at least the first 3 chapters of the book. I'm going to go on live on social media. I'm going to cook this amazing dinner for my husband. Listen, just pick one thing. Just pick one. And maybe I'm the only person who thinks that she could do everything at one time. Maybe. But I know when I jump in, I just jump in too far. And so pick one thing that you want to improve and you want to change in your life. Okay. And once you get that one thing, really dig into that thing. What is it? So what's one area? Is it your patience with your children? And I'm going to say, let's pick a thing that involves our parental habits, right? What is the one thing? What is something that you want to, is it patience? And are you listening? If you say that it's patience, the reality is we cannot give anyone else what we do not have to give to ourselves. So if you lack patience with your children, the reality is you don't have patience with yourself. If you are abrupt with your children, with like, why'd you do it that way? Why'd you do, it is because you don't have that self-love to give. We cannot give what we do not have. All the people who say, I love my children more than I love myself, that's impossible. We can't love our children more than we love ourselves because how we love ourselves is the love that we give. So if we're empty, we're just serving from an empty plate. That doesn't mean you're not paying the bills. That doesn't mean that you're not going to soccer practice. That doesn't mean that you're not on the PTA or even the president of the PTA. But it could mean that you are emotionally checked out. You are emotionally depleted because you don't have anything else to give. It could mean that every time they come to you to tell you something that they're so excited about, you shut it down. You minimize it. You got an A on the test. Mommy, I got an A on my test. And you're like, oh, you got an A on your test? Well, next time you better study more to get an A plus. You got a 90%. Ain't no 90%. No, you need to get 100%. Come on now. The baby is excited. And if that child is an F student and doggone it, they got up to a D, you better celebrate that D. Come on, D. Until you can get them, come on, C. Come on, B. And look, sometimes it means that we got to go back in and study, because I know some of the stuff, when they get to certain levels of math, you're like, ooh, I don't know. But we can find stuff on YouTube. We can find things. The point is, celebrate them. And the more you celebrate them, the more you're celebrating yourself. You're building something up in them, something so special in them. And they need that from us, because maybe we didn't get that. But just because we didn't get that doesn't mean we can't shift that. So remember who you were in that moment in order for us to connect beautifully with our children. So how do we acknowledge our children? The way we speak to them, the way we speak about them. Good God, let me tell y'all something. Once again, my hands are up. And these are not my proudest moments, but God dog it, if I could say anything to you all right now that is going to support you with your journey in parenthood so that you can shift something, please let me. And please hear my heart. You know, my middle baby boy, remember the one that I told you seemed to pick up all the habits that I didn't want in life? That one? When people ask me about him, because he was just always up to something. You know, that kid was always up to something. You know that one kid that's just always into something? He's very smart, brilliant kid, but by golly, he's always into something. When people ask me about him, I didn't speak life over him. I didn't say, he's a great kid. He's doing great. You know, he's doing good. No, I was like, you know him, always something, always something. And you may laugh about it and you may be just joking, but the reality is that's what we're speaking over our children. You know, the parents, how's so-and-so? How's little Johnny? He bad. Don't say that. They hear you. Don't say that. I'm going to tell you a true story about how the words we speak show up. Remember my precious baby boy. My little one, I didn't give birth to him. But in our home, we decided that we were not going to be a step family. He doesn't call me stepmom. I'm his mom. And his mom, his biological mother, is mommy, right? And so we were at a basketball game. Middle son played high school basketball back in the day. And a woman introduced me to one of her friends. She was like, oh, this is Tanisha. Hey, how you doing? And she was like, and that's her son, number 3 on the court. And this is her daughter. And oh, this is her stepson. And I looked at the lady and I said, don't do that. And she paused. I said, I never introduced him as my stepson. So you don't get to change the title of who my baby is. Now, I was standing up for what I know in my life and in my family, and that's just how I am. But what happened is time passed. And when his biological mother, this was before we are where we are today, we have a beautiful relationship, separate story for another day. But his biological mother said to him, that ain't your mama. And you know what that little baby boy did? He looked at her and said, yes, she is. She does everything for me that all the other mommies at school do. You see, because I spoke up for him publicly, he voted for me privately. Because of the words that I speak, whether I'm on the telephone or I'm doing this. And I realized something. The moment it became to me, I had a conviction like T. The reason why your middle baby boy is cutting up is, what words do you speak over him? Do you speak life? Ooh, no, I don't. Do you speak what you want? Or are you speaking what you see? Come on, mamas. We got to speak what we want. I know it's tough. We can sit here all day and go back and forth over who has it the roughest as a mom. I know the struggle. But the reality is, I brought on some of that myself because I could have shifted my conversation. I poured into that bucket because of my behavior. I did some of that too. But when I realized it, I didn't just ignore it and kind of sit like, let me just drink my tea. maybe they won't know. No. The same way I was rowdy and loud when I was like, hey, get it together, is the same way I was like, hey, mommy got this all wrong. Hey, y'all, come on, together, let's work this out. Let's get this thing together. How can I support you? What did I do? Oh, and while we're on this, another thing of how you speak is, how do you speak about their father? Keep breathing with me, ladies. How are you speaking about their father? I'm talking about when you're not with him anymore. Your daddy ain't nothing. He don't even pay no bills. He don't pay child support. How do you speak about their father who is there? He ain't never home. All he do is be on the couch all day. He ain't da 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 da. Hey, 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 hey. Whether their father is in prison, whether their father left you as a teenage mother, as did my older two children's father, that is their father, and they love him with all of his imperfections. And sometimes they love him more because he's not there, and they crave that. We have to watch the words we speak. Moms, just because they love their fathers, does not take away the love that they have for you. I know your struggle. I know you busting your tail. I know you may not have help. I know all those things, but what I also know is life and death is in the power of the tongue. And you and I all know, we've all seen the story and how it unfolds, where a mother speaks negatively of the father over and over. And when the child gets an opportunity to connect with that dad, they run to him and they act like we never existed. Why? Because we have kind of pushed them to. So look, I'm not here to ask what happened, because I already know the struggle. I already know. I get it. But come on, moms. Our perceived failures as a mother are all in our mind. We are doing the absolute best we can with what we have. And some of us, our baggage of life was packed with so much nonsense, shenanigans, family trauma, and all of the abuse before we were at the age of 5. Our bag was already packed for us. So all I'm saying is, now it's time for us to look in that bag real good and say, okay, hold on. This right here, this story is not supporting me anymore. And the story that I keep repeating to myself over and over about how much of a deadbeat their father is, that story is not supporting me anymore. And the story that I keep telling myself that I'm not beautiful, that's not the story that that's gonna support me anymore. And the story that I keep telling myself that I'm not sexy, and so therefore I can't see my daughter as beautiful no matter what she looks like, that story is not supporting me anymore. We have to rewrite the narrative of our lives for ourselves in order to heal our perceived failures as a mother. We are all riddled with beautiful imperfections. We're all riddled with beautiful imperfections, yet we are perfectly imperfect. Keep moving forward, sis. You got this. You got this. You got this. From my family to yours, I love you guys. If there's anything that I can say or do to support you, let me know. You know we're going to be back here next Tuesday having this same open dialogue. If there are any forgiveness topics that you would like for me to share, let me know. DM me, message me. This is a total conversation, a dialogue, not a monologue. And I want us to be into it, and let's talk about it. Let's heal motherhood through sisterhood. From my family to yours, I love you guys. Let's rock it. And please, I would love to hear what you guys are doing to heal some of your perceived failures as a mother, because y'all are dope. I love you guys.